Sheriff, thank you so much for agreeing to do this. I really
you.
appreciate your perspective. I think it's really crucial to this story. I want to throw out some numbers to you and get your reaction. According to the Fulton County Court Administration, as of July of this year, there were 1,200 individuals who were detained in your jail who are waiting for an indictment, not officially charged with a crime yet, and an additional 1,400 individuals who had been indicted but are still waiting for their trial date. What's your reaction to those numbers?
Well, those numbers have risen. So our data shows that we have nearly 1,600 people that are unindicted, specifically 1,573 individuals as of today that are unindicted. I certainly know the DA and her team have been working to make sure that people are held accountable for their actions. Ultimately, the system is broken. And so we're in a space where the remainder of people who are indicted still have to wait for a court date, a trial date to be set, whatever that looks like. So we're caught between the DA's office, the solicitor's office, as well as the judges, planning these next steps for people to go to court.
How do these numbers impact your jail and detainees?
Well, when you look, arrests are up over 1,000 from this time last year, 1,000 additional detainees, and so the numbers continue to rise. And so if you keep pumping into a system or into a facility like ours, and there is no relief valve, there is no bond for people to get out in many instances. One point last week we checked, there were over 1,400 people that had a no bond status, meaning they couldn't receive a bond even if, many have gone to court, but they just could not receive a bond. The misnomer here, though, is that at Fulton County we house a bunch of misdemeanors. We don't. Ultimately, everyone we have has been charged with a serious crime. Even our misdemeanors, in many instances, have domestic violence attached to them or some kind of violent charge attached to them. So the sheriff's office is caught in the middle of what court looks like, what the DAs and the solicitors are able to prosecute, and in many instances, people without representation and conflicting out. You know, for us, what does that look like? It looks like, in many cases, we have multiple defendants. Well, if the public defender's office is unable to defend because one person has been selected in a multi-defendant case, then they have to find independent attorneys. So everybody has the right to representation. It just clogs the system the way it's set up.
I want to talk to you about some detainees who have been waiting in your jail for years. One of them is Duress Sanders. He waited nearly 10 years for his trial date. He was ultimately convicted of murder, a triple murder. Was your jail ever intended to house someone 10 years waiting for trial?
Well, the direct answer is no. We were never intended as a penitentiary or as a state prison. It is a pretrial facility. Ultimately, part of our problem, part of the problem really around the nation is the jails have become the mental health facilities for their jurisdictions. We're the largest mental health facility in the state. And I say that in understanding that when a person goes to trial, they also have the right to be competent in order to not just defend themselves, but be able to make decisions and help make decisions about their case. And so when a judge resets a case for this competency hearing or whatever that looks like, when you have a strain on the system like we've had over really the course of a decade, if not more, we inherited this system. And it is one that allows people to languish in jail, waiting on the opportunity to get either the mental health help they need or be determined if they, or have their, really their competency level restored in many instances, or a judge determining a person's not competent.
When you hear about someone like Mr. Sanders who waited almost 10 years, is there ever a point where you're like, this guy's been in here 3 years, 5 years, 6 years, what's happening? Are you reaching out to the DA or judges saying, what's the deal with this guy?
So we started an inmate advocacy unit, and that unit really has gone through all 3,600 of our detainees, each case, to see what we can do in terms of improving the communications. But really what really weighs on me is, in many instances, yes, a person is innocent until proven guilty, but if we have 3,600 detainees, there's the potential to be 3,600 victims. And so my job is to protect and serve as well. And so we have to make sure that we create a balance for our community. Again, at one point we had over 547 people charged with murder. So everybody just can't go back out on the street. But we started an inmate advocacy unit to focus on any misdemeanors or any persons that have been here longer periods of time than had they been convicted and been out on the streets in 2 or 3 months, or served time and been on the street 2 or 3 months. Those kinds of things we've been able to work with the judges, work with the DA's office to try and at least get people consent bonds or back to their families.
Let me talk to you about another detainee that you may know about, DeAnthony Tolbert. He waited 4.5 years for his trial, and in July, a jury found him not guilty. When you hear that one of your detainees waited 4.5 years for his trial and was ultimately found not guilty, what goes through your mind?
Well, a number of things, right? Why did he end up waiting that long? Was the wait itself, did it have an impact on whether he was found, guilty or not guilty? Again, that's up to the jurors and that's up to the judges and those that defend him. So for us, it's a matter of making sure that they have access to that kind of defense. And I give credit to the system from the perspective that if he was innocent, they proved he was innocent, and it was our job really to let him go at that point.
When you look at the numbers and you take a step back, to you, is this a constitutional crisis?
Well, our jail's been in crisis for more than 2 decades, and the system itself, as I mentioned earlier, is broken. And so we have to look at models around the country that do it better, indict people faster. But I have to give some credit to the county and to the Board of Commissioners. They really have put us in a space where they've been able to hire additional judges, bring back senior judges. Ultimately, we need to look at the overall system to say, is Fulton County being served by the number of judges we have? And on a state level, do we need to add 10, 15 more judges to our overall system and what that looks like?
If you had to put a finger on it, who or what is to blame here?
I think there's enough blame to go around. I can tell you who's not to blame. Not to blame is the sheriff's office. But the system itself is one that perpetuates and continues to grow. Our police departments, our local police departments, do a really great job of solving crimes. And when you solve a crime, you make an arrest. And those arrests their job is to solve that crime. And look at APD, their clear up rate is somewhere around 93, 94%, meaning if you commit a crime inside Atlanta, you're going to go to jail. Ultimately, you are then put into this cycle of really this perpetual cycle of going to court, not going to court, being assigned a judge that is probably overworked in many instances, and some that do more than others, right? It just depends on the judge you get assigned, the defense you have, what does that look like? The public defender's office will tell you they're understaffed and underpaid. So it's the system, but the system in and of itself is not perpetuated by the sheriff's office.
I was speaking to a criminal defense attorney who compares Fulton County's jail to Gitmo, and here's why he says that comparison. He says there are people in Guantanamo Bay, Gitmo, who have been waiting years for their trial. Some of them have never been charged. There are similar comparisons to some of your detainees. When you hear that comparison, what goes through your mind?
Well, it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate the county has been in this posture for years on end, long before I was elected, long before Madam DA was elected. And so we are on the side of trying to figure out how to get it done correctly. And so for us to continue, create an inmate advocacy unit so that not just the detainee can advocate for themselves, but so we can advocate for those individuals. And it has yielded some very good results.
You've advocated for a new jail, but if the backlog is not addressed, is not fixed, what will a new jail do? Would it even matter?
Well, it certainly matters, and we've advocated for a replacement jail. This jail is, when you look at your home, you look at a single family home, for instance, that was built to house a single family, and then the day it was open, you have multiple families in that home. The pipes weren't rated for that. The lighting wasn't rated for that. The walls weren't rated for that. And that's what has occurred here. From the day we opened 30 years ago, we were overcrowded. And in the posture that we've had over the last several decades, No one has taken care of the facility. You look at the bands, and I love the Falcons, but Arthur Blank came in and built the team a new facility. That kind of posture, that kind of futuristic look down the road is where we need to be, because where we are now with our facility is about warehousing individuals. What a new facility would look like will be about focusing on mental health, focusing on reentry, focusing on making sure people have what they need on the way in the door, as opposed to just warehousing people. We have to change the culture.
What would be your message to the chief judge, the DA, moving forward to help alleviate overcrowding here?
Well, the wonderful thing about Atlanta, wonderful thing about Fulton County specifically, is we all have great relationships. There was a time before I was elected, just 4 or 5 years ago, you couldn't put the police chief, the DA, and the sheriff all in the same room. Now it's the exact opposite. So we work well together. We probably talk 2 or 3 times a week just to figure out what we can do with individual cases and multiple cases. And so in many instances, consent bonds are being given on people that have, again, I mentioned earlier, a number of people that have been here more than a year or longer, just waiting to go to court, working with the judges to make sure that those consent bonds are signed. So there's not a rock we won't overturn to help our community, but ultimately our goal is to hold people accountable as well.
Chairman Pitts earlier this week threw out some ideas to help alleviate the jail. One, by renegotiating the contract with the Atlanta City Jail to have them provide or make more beds available, even the federal prison system. What are your thoughts on those recommendations?
So those are not new ideas, right? I've been saying that since 1/1/21, since I took office. I helped negotiate both the deals with ACDC, albeit flawed in its approach. We have to create a pressure relief valve. We had an opportunity several months ago to take many detainees down to Irwin County. The board didn't have the appetite at the time. One thing that we were very intentional about is making sure we communicate with the board. So if you recall, I took 1,500 shanks, really it was 1,200 shanks, homemade knives in 5 different wheelbarrows into the Board of Commissioners meeting. The building is falling apart. Detainees are using the building to weaponize and create really shanks and hurt other individuals. And part of our problem is because people languish here in jail for long periods of time, they get additional charges because they are assaulting other people. And so, again, an opportunity like this, and Chairman Pitts is absolutely correct, it's not a new idea, right? I reached out to the Bureau of Justice Assistance as well as the National Institute of Corrections in September of last year and said, we need help. We need help from a federal level, we need help from a local level, and for us to be able to create a pressure relief valve, get people out of the facility. A prime example, just between this week and last week alone, we visited 2 facilities, one in the state of Georgia, 4 hours south of here, and one in Mississippi as of yesterday. Really, we can take 1,500 people, anywhere from 800 to 1,500 people, put them in a more humane environment, and then slowly get the building here restored. Because one thing we know is building a new or replacement jail will take 3 to 5 years. We still have to take care of this building as best we can.
I think you were just mentioning the potential of bringing some of those detainees to Mississippi, a jail in Mississippi and South Georgia, is that right?
Correct.
And I think the Public Defender's Office is against that. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, first, I'll never make everybody happy. I'll never make everybody happy, but the one thing we understand is that we have to do something. The chairman and I agree. We are in a state of crisis. We've been there for over a decade. Ultimately, the Public Defender's Office, selfishly, the way I look at it, will either not drive to see the people they defend or use technology to see the people they defend, but ultimately they want to complain whether I move people or not move people. So to that extent, we'll let the legal experts figure that part out, but I'm going to move people out of this facility to create a safer environment.
What are we not talking about as it relates to how the criminal backlog system in the county is impacting your jail? What am I not talking about? with you?
Well, I think you've pretty much covered it, right? The one thing that we have to stay focused on, though, is having an overcrowded facility as large as this. When we have nearly 500 people sleeping on the floor, we've done a great job of reducing that number. What does it look like by outsourcing to Cobb, to Oconee, to Forsyth, whatever it looks like. I wrote a letter to all 158 other sheriffs in the state and said, whether you have 1 bed, 10 beds, or 1,000 beds, we need help. And to be able to do that, the piece that we're missing is the constant drain of having an overcrowded facility causes mental health pressures on those that are really on the floors, those that are incarcerated, and our team. Our sheriff's office, our women and men of the sheriff's office do a wonderful job with what we have. And we have to give people a facility they're both proud to work in, but more importantly, a facility that is safe to work in.
I've covered jails for years, and I know one of the things that you don't have control over is the health of the inmate when they come into your facility. You don't have any control of that, and oftentimes their health, because of the demographic they come from, not having a lot of money, they don't have access to health care. I say all that because we have to at least identify or at least mention that there have been 10 people who have died in your jail this year. Knowing that you don't have any control over their health before they get here, 10 is still a lot, and I'm wondering if you can respond to that.
Well, it's unfortunate, and I feel for them, feel for their families. It's interesting, though, when you have somebody that has chronic heart conditions, all right? You're absolutely right. When they come in the facility, the expectation is that we are their hospital and their doctors as well. When you have somebody that has multiple seizures, all right, ongoing seizures, it is unfortunate that we are not just the highest, we have the highest number of mental health patients, but we also have the highest number of chronic conditions that we aren't responsible for until we're responsible for them, if that makes sense. When a person comes in, we take over that health care and what that looks like, but in many instances, people have not taken care of themselves, and it causes and continues to cause issues. Now, one of the things that we've done, again, we've been very, very fortunate to work with the Board of Commissioners and put together a actual armband system that is, the technology is really unbelievable. It will actually track a person's heart rate. So we know if it spikes, we know if it drops. And it's really predicated upon, right as I became sheriff, 2 or 3 weeks later, one of my hugest supporters, her son, committed suicide. And so we needed to figure out how do we lean into technology and make sure that if a person's heart rate drops, we're immediately notified. So just on this past Monday, we went live with new technology. We're testing it on the 3rd floor. The Board of Commissioners has given us the monies to outfit the entire 3rd floor. So that's mental health and medical in a space that will instantaneously notify, create an alarm for the medical unit, for our team. And if that alarm is not responded to 5 minutes later, to the next level of supervisors, 10 minutes later, to as high as me, 10, 15 minutes, after that. So it's responsible for going out, looking and sending out text messages, emails when a person spikes. The other piece to it is we've had a high level of violence, to your point, and in that, if a person's heart rate goes up, we'll know that that's the reason or what that looks like. We can go check on them. But also, if they're individuals that are to be kept separate from each other, this armband technology will make sure that we keep individuals separate from each other, not in close proximity to each other. The alarms will go off, et cetera. So we have to leverage technology, both wearable technology and camera systems, to help us as we get ready to move forward and navigate into the future.
Anything else that you'd like to say when it comes to, I mean, we were talking earlier before we started rolling, there are a number of inmates. We talked about Duress Sanders, who waited almost 10 years. We talked about D'Anthony Tolbert, who waited 4.5 years, but there's an inmate at last check, Sandy Reed, waiting 7 years currently. Raylon Browning, 6 years. Another gentleman, Vernon Spear, 10 years. It seems like this isn't supposed to be this situation. Like, it seems like these people shouldn't be waiting this long. And I'm wondering are you frustrated when you hear these numbers?
Well, I'm not frustrated. Let me tell you why I'm not frustrated. I knew when I took office, I knew when I ran for office that the system was broken. I just didn't know how broken, right? And while many people are standing by rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic, knowing it's going to sink, we've said this and been very transparent since 1/1/21, since I took office. So our goal is to really lean in, focus, and see what we can do better to provide additional information, ask the right questions. In many instances, all of those questions and answers lie in the judges and the courts that have to hear those cases, lie in the DA who has to prosecute those cases, or whether it be the Solicitor General, whatever that looks like. And in many instances, it's relying on technology to make sure that they have the witnesses and the lawyers that they need to prosecute a case. But again, we, as the Sheriff's Office, are stuck right in the middle.
And do we know whether that person who's been waiting 13 years, I know that in some instances, sometimes they go to prison for an unrelated charge and then they come back or whatever. Is this straight 13 years?
I can check.
Okay.
I can check, but it says booking date 4/5/2010.
That is incredible, 13 years.
And what equally is incredible, and the story that needs to be really socialized, is the fact that out of 3,464 inmates today, only 187 of them are misdemeanors. And then when you drill down on some of those misdemeanors, the Solicitor General and his office find in many cases some of them are habitual violators, which will catapult them into another category. Many of them are violent by nature, whatever that looks like. And many of them have mental health issues that he and his team are working through to see how quickly they can get people help as well. So we're really laser focused on that, but that also means that over 3,200 people have felony charges or greater. And so we just have to be very, very cognizant of that. And those felony charges that are possession charges, for instance, and a person's been here 6 months or longer, those are the kind of things we're highlighting, taking to the DA, and see if we can get consent bonds on.
Wow. 13 years. 187 misdemeanor as of today?
Yes.
Okay.
That was on Tuesday.
And Tuesday.
Yeah.
Sheriff, thanks for doing this.
No, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I appreciate the story. I appreciate shedding light on this.
I don't think people, I think there is a lot of blame to go around, like you mentioned, but I don't think people understand. I think there's value in telling people how we got here.
I agree.
And why we're here, not just explaining, hey, here's this jail that's had multiple issues.
And it's valuable in telling people where we are going as well, right? And there's no one that wants to see anybody languish in jail, period, right? You want people to go to trial, be found innocent or guilty, and ultimately sentenced by a judge who can make those decisions if they're guilty, released if a judge and jury decides that there's not evidence to support the case, and then continue to churn through this backlog.
Is there, and you may have mentioned this, so I apologize if you already said it, but do you guys have a mechanism or some sort of person tracking, like the guy had 13 years? I imagine after 5 years, you guys are going, well, what's taking so long? Is there someone sort of I know that you don't have any control over their trial date, but is there anyone going, what's going on with this guy?
Well, keep in mind, we inherited this, so the person has been here
Before
13 years.
Before you even got here, yeah.
Right, so the person's been here 5 years or even 4 years, right? They were here before we got here, but what we did is create the inmate advocacy unit so that we can do a better job of tracking and asking those questions. Why has this person been here 13 years? And most of the time it is a legal representation problem or a legal competency problem. And so we have to make sure if there are things that we can do. For instance, that we've had a gentleman that's been here almost 3 or 4 years that's awaiting a bed in Georgia Regional. What does that look like? And then when they go to, in many of these cases, because of competency level, when they get a bed space in Georgia Regional, who services the entire state, not just us, when they get a bed, they sit potentially, and here's a unique opportunity, right? for us to fix as a system. That person goes to Georgia Regional, they are brought back up to a certain competency level, they're turned back over to us, and when they are, we have 30 days to get them on a trial calendar. On that 31st day, they're no longer competent and they have to go back. But they get in line again to go back to Georgia Regional or go back to have this competency evaluation, and then the cycle repeats itself. And so when a judge has a calendar full of these circumstances, and we say, okay, we got this person back, we got 29 days at this point to get them to trial in many instances, not just to court, to trial. Now you got to pick a jury and you got to go through all that again. So the system itself is inherently broken.
for the time.
Yeah, I mentioned that earlier.
Oh,
That was part of the 847 people that we found that had been here a year or longer. Ultimately, to Natalie's point, had they been convicted, they'd probably get 6 months. They probably get probation.
So I
What
want to
that
make
looks
sure
like.
that I understand. This is key. You have individuals, or you had, or you
We
currently have individuals who have been waiting longer for their trial date. That if they had been convicted sooner,
That's
they
in
would
theory.
be out.
That's in theory,
Okay.
right? Because a judge could have given them 2 years,
Right.
right? But in theory, a judge could have given them probation, right? So that is in theory, but what is a fact is when I first took office, we had 847 people that had been here a year or longer, had not been back to court for a second time. And when I say second time, you get your first appearance within 72 hours, and ultimately you have the right to have a speedy trial. And we cannot forget a lot of this coming out of COVID, right? So this 90-day indictment period that would normally be the standard was affected, and there were emergency orders that went around from the chief judge to really higher courts in the state that gave DAs and other prosecutors an opportunity to expand upon that 90 days. COVID really exacerbated a currently broken system. I mean, really what we
It was
have.
broken before.
It was broken before, right. So it was broken before and we put a tourniquet on it, and now it's broken and we got to keep our hand on the tourniquet and run the facility at the same time.